walk into the corner of my room, see my friends in high places. I don't know which is which or who is whom. They've stolen each other's faces. Janet is there with her high hat and hair and full of bedroom feathers. And Janet is known to make dead men groan in any kind of weather. I crawl over to her, I say, hey baby, I say, hey Janet, you are the one, you are the sun, and I'm your beautiful planet. But she ain't down with any of that, 'cause she's heard that shit before. And I say, oh yeah, you're right, 'cause I see Betty X standing by the door with more news from nowhere.
More news from nowhere.
Yeah, more news from nowhere.
More news from nowhere.
And it's getting strange in here. Yeah, it's getting stranger every year. More news from nowhere.
More news from nowhere.
Yeah, more news from nowhere. All right now. Now Betty X is like Betty Y minus that fatal chromosome. Her hair is like the wine dark sea in which sailors come home. I say, hey baby, I say, hey Betty X. I lean close up to her throat. This light you were carrying is like a lamp hanging from a distant boat. It is my light, says Betty X. Betty X says, this light in yours. And so much wind blew through her words that I went rolling down the hall for more news from nowhere.
More news from nowhere.
More news from nowhere. It's strange in here. Yeah, it gets stranger every year. More news from nowhere.
More news from nowhere.
Yeah, more news from nowhere. I turn another corner, I go down a corridor and I see this guy. He must be about 100 foot tall and he only has one eye. He asked me for my autograph, I write nobody, and then I wrap myself up in my woolly coat and I blind him with my pen. 'Cause someone must have stuck something in my drink. Everything's getting strange looking. Half the people have turned into squealing pigs, the other half are cooking. Well, let me out of here, I cried, and I went pushing past. And I saw Miss Polly singing with some girls. I cried, struck me to the mast for more news from nowhere.
More news from nowhere.
Yeah, more news from nowhere.
More news from nowhere.
It's getting strange in here, and it gets stranger every year. More news from nowhere.
More news from nowhere.
Yeah, more news from nowhere. Well, then a black girl with no clothes on, she danced across the room. We charted the progress of the planets around that boogie-woogie moon. I called her my Nubian princess, gave her some sweet back badass jive. I spent the next 7 years between her legs, a pining for my wife. But then by and by it all went wrong. I fell washed up on the shore. She stared down at me from up in the storm, and I sobbed up on the floor for more news from nowhere.
More news from nowhere.
Yeah, more news from nowhere. And don't it make you feel alone? Don't it make you wanna get right on home? More news from nowhere.
More news from nowhere.
More news from nowhere. Let me hear now. Well, here comes Alina with two black eyes. She's given herself a transfusion. She's filled herself with panda blood to avoid all the confusion. I say the sun rises and falls with you and various things about love, but a rising violence in me cuts all my circuits off. Well, Alina, she starts screaming. Her cheeks are full of psychotropic leaves. Her extinction was nearly absolute when she turned her back on me for more news from nowhere.
More news from nowhere.
I said I'm more news from nowhere.
More news from nowhere.
And it's getting strange in here. Yeah. All the horrors that have befallen me, well, Deanna is to blame. Every time I see you, babe, you make me feel so all alone. And I wet my face into a dress long after she'd gone home with more news from no